I'm on the Vancouver Startup Week team. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are grateful to be virtually gathered on Indigenous land, regardless of where you are joining us from. I'm grateful to be on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish peoples. I'm privileged to live, work, and play on these lands. First, I'd like to thank you for joining us for VSW 2021, and welcome to Startup Success, Maximize Recruitment and Funding, hosted by the University of Waterloo. This session is also part of the VSW Growth Track and is proudly supported by Innovate BC. Innovate BC is a crowd agency that provides small business around the province with funding, business coaching, and educational content. They're helping entrepreneurs and founders start and scale their business and adapt to the changes brought out by COVID-19. So if you're looking for support for your business, make sure you stop by their booth to learn more about how they can help. And if you have any questions for our speakers, please post them in the Whova Q&A on the session, and you can also upvote questions by other attendees. But for now, I'll pass the mic over to Emily and Tammy, and we'll begin.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And hi and welcome everyone. Welcome to Startup Success, Maximize Recruitment and Funding. So I'm Tammy Kim Newman, a business developer with cooperative and experiential education, and I help connect employers with top tech talent. And I'm joined by Emily Burgess, who's also a business developer with cooperative and experiential education. And Emily specializes in supporting small businesses and startups with all their recruitment strategies. So before we get started, the University of Waterloo would like to acknowledge that much of our work takes place on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our main campus is situated on the Haldimand Track, the land promised to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. And our active and continuous work towards reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and is centralized within our Indigenous Initiatives Office. So today we're going to look at giving an overview of next-gen talent insights, what you can do to attract top talent. We're going to look at some recruitment engagement tips and how you can fund your hires. So the University of Waterloo operates the world's largest co-op program. And because of that, we're lucky to be home to the WorkTerm Institute, which is the only institute in the world dedicated to research on cooperative education and other forms of work-integrated learning. It was founded in 2002 as the Waterloo Center for Advancement of Cooperative Education on the basis that with us having the largest co-op program, we have the largest data set to study, continue to understand and advance its practice. And so we look forward to sharing some of WorkTerm Institute's research insight findings with you today. So with rapidly changing demographics and the need for more top tech talent, as well as diverse talent, recruiting efforts need to be honed in to make sure you're attracting the best candidates. And with more employees having the flexibility and choice to decide where and for whom they want to work for in this virtual environment, what can organizations do to be more competitive, regardless of whether you're in person, remote, or hybrid? And with Generation Z talent entering the workforce in more increasingly fast-paced numbers, organizations are going to have to think about how they can dedicate their recruitment practices toward this unique talent pool. So for example, we've seen reports indicating that as much as 58% of the workforce will be comprised of millennials and Gen Z talent by 2028. And we've even seen other reports indicating as much as 75% of the workforce by 2025 will be comprised of Gen Z talent. And so this is why we wanted to take some time today to especially focus on this new generation of talent. So we're uniquely positioned at the University of Waterloo to give some research insights into the next generation, as we have the largest Gen Z talent workforce that's already out in the workplace before they enter the industry full-time. So the WorkTerm Institute studied the responses of over 600 students and employers to find out what they value in terms of the motivators at work and what they care about values in terms of attracting them to organizations. So these are some of the results that we wanted to share with you. So we looked at what students valued in terms of their values at work, and we can see that benevolence is number one. So benevolence meaning, helping and caring about family, friends, and colleagues, the people close to them. But it's interesting to note that when we look at table C, so what employers perceive next generation talent to value, benevolence is actually way further down the list. So it's kind of interesting to see that there's maybe a disconnect with what employers think students are valuing nowadays. So when we look at table B and what employers are valuing in terms of their organizational values, we see that self-direction is number one. So self-direction being independent thought, managing oneself. And it's good to see that that's not completely far off base. You can see that self-direction is the number two value for next gen talent. And it's within the top three in terms of what employers perceive next gen talent to care about. So that's good news on that front. So when we look at table C in terms of what employers think students value most, we can see that they think students value hedonism the most. So hedonism meaning having fun, enjoying what you do. And they're not completely wrong because it is within the top three values for next gen talent. So this kind of creates a very interesting challenge for employers because somehow they have to find that balance between marketing a fun work environment and culture, while at the same time also marketing social good and the impact that students can have at their workplace. So one tip we would have is if you're fortunate enough to work at an employer that supports volunteer hours or volunteer activities or days, make sure you're sharing that on your social channels because that's where Next Gen Talent is going to see it. And hopefully they will then start to resonate the impact and social good with your brand. So next we're going to look at top motivators for Gen Z talent in the workplace. So it's a little bit slightly different than the values, but we'll see that there's a little bit of overlap as well. So when we looked at what employers perceived Gen Z to be motivated by in the workplace, employers are indicating they think flexible workplace and hours is number one, even though it doesn't resonate within the top 6 motivators for next gen talent. So this is interesting because it does tie back to maybe the previous slide in terms of the values that employers think students care about. They think that young talent cares about hedonism and having fun. So it might make sense that they think, okay, a flexible workplace and hours would be most important so that they can have more fun with their hobbies and outside interests. So when we look at what students are actually saying they care about in terms of being the motivators at work, it's good to see that number 1, 2, and 3, so enjoying what they do, having a positive impact on society, and developing friendships at work, is being recognized by employers as well. They do recognize that those factors are important. So as you think back to this past year and during the pandemic, if you have onboarded any new hires that are younger, knowing that these are things that motivate them, it would be good to look back on, friendships, for example, in this new potentially virtual work environment. For some of us, it could be a little bit more challenging to make those connections with colleagues. So thinking about, are there extra activities you could be doing as a company to help make those connections a little bit more easy to form? So for example, in our workplace, we're very fortunate to have young talent every term. We do have some co-op students each term join us. So we actually task them with running events like trivia, and we've even done fun virtual team activities such as a virtual escape room, and we do virtual coffee connections where you're paired up with a new person in the department once every 4 months. So there's things like that that a company can do to help ensure they're forming those connections for their new hires. So on the flip side, 3 out of the 6 motivators for next gen talent are not being recognized by employers. So, when you look at number 4, solving complex problems, if this is very important to next gen talent and it's not being recognized by employers, you have to start to ask yourself, what type of work potentially is being assigned to new hires and younger employees. If they're not feeling like they're being given meaningful or challenging work, that may lead them to leave the workforce a little bit early, and then you get this employee churn over the next year or two. And depending as a company, there's a chance you might misattribute that to the wrong values. You might think, okay, so-and-so left the organization, maybe we're not fun enough. So then you double down on the pizza and the foosball table and all the fun perks, while not potentially recognizing that it could be the actual work and the challenge and the impact of the work that could be keeping employees there. And so my colleague Emily is going to get to this later on in the presentation, but she'll talk to projects. And one of the benefits of incorporating projects into the workplace for younger hires is that it does sort of force them to then look at number 5 and 6 in terms of the student motivators. So discovering their potential in the workplace and job stability. A lot of times with side projects, depending on the business need you're trying to solve, It forces younger employees to connect with other units in the company and different staff members, and then they start to make the connections with maybe the different roles that employees have had in the organization, and that may also lead to them, discovering job stability and future career pathways for themselves. So these are just things to keep in mind. So when we look at the actual recruitment process, we find that this makes sense in terms of the number two things that employers are looking for. They're looking for the actual skill sets, the interpersonal skills and the technical skills. Can a candidate actually do the job? It makes sense to focus on that. But I think we've all worked with people, in our careers that maybe know how to do the job well, but that doesn't mean that they're always the right fit in terms of the organizational values or company culture. And so what's interesting is a few slides ago, when we analyzed the results and asked employers what they valued most as organizations, they indicated that self-direction was the most important, but it's the number 6 quality that they're looking for in their recruitment practices. So it's just a conversation starter to say, really think about the organizational values that you have as an organization, and make sure that really is embedded to all aspects of your recruitment practice, because that will really tell the story to candidates. So all of these potential mismatched values and perceptions leads to, unfortunately, a values gap. So our students and young talent, they want their workplace values to align with their personal values. And so half of our students indicated that they're unlikely to accept a job that matches their skills, but not their values. And so when you think of yourself as maybe a startup or a smaller company, or even if you're a larger company, for the founder or the recruiter to be potentially wasting up to 50% of their time, energy, and resources into recruiting candidates that aren't going to actually accept the offer, that's a huge loss. So this is why some of the research findings in terms of the values and motivators are important, so that you can make sure to shape that into your recruitment practices. And overall, from the past few slides, we can tell that there's a little bit of a disconnect between what employers think next-gen talent values and is motivated by, but also potentially disconnect between what organizations are saying they value and what they actually are looking for in the recruitment practices. But have no fear, we are here to help you. So we want to make sure that based on that research and some other research that we've done, that we can help you identify some of the 6 key themes that you need to incorporate into your job description. So we're going to help you understand, some of the Gen Z language that you need to be incorporating, and doing all that you can to position yourself as an employer of choice. So our department surveyed over 37,000 job postings in Waterloo Works, our job portal system, over the last 3 years. And we found that these words linked to these 6 key themes were what ended up resulting in a higher number of applications. So company culture, programming languages, food and games, employer values, compensation, and career development. And so in our analysis, we looked at multiple data sets. So we looked at not only the different industries, we looked at different sizes of companies, different locations, and we found that it was actually these 6 key themes that mattered most to candidates, not even like the branding or how well known the employer name was. So now we'll kind of go into a couple of examples and show you some sample postings. So when we look at company culture, keywords related to collaboration and change, those are what really stood out, as well as the words related to people. So the community, social opportunities at work, those were the words that resonated in this theme. So when we look at two sample job postings and how they measured up in terms of company culture, they both did pretty well in terms of the application numbers. So again, you can tell they're really incorporating that verbiage and that language, right? So they both spoke to sort of community and collaboration, being inclusive, and sort of fostering innovation and creativity. So when we look at the next category, we looked at employer values. And we found that the words that really stood out in terms of this theme were words related to the tools and supports that were available to new hires, as well as the opportunities to lead and impact and have the opportunity to learn and grow. So here are 2 sample postings as well to kind of indicate how they measured up in terms of marketing their employer values. So we can see there's a bit of a difference in terms of the application number. So when we look at the second posting, job B, again, they did a very good job in terms of articulating the organizational values and what they care about. But it sort of put the onus more on the student and came across potentially more as a checklist in terms of things that students need to identify in order to connect with the organization. When we look at job A and the higher number of applications that that one received, it's a little bit more conversational in tone, right? So I think they did a good job in their summary of sort of connecting with the candidate through their language. They have the tools and resources they need to support new hires. So that's something we don't always see in postings. So it's really putting the onus on the organization and the job A posting to say, this is what we're going to do for you, the candidate. So it's really flipping that dialogue. And so outside of the actual job posting text, we found that this was the next most important feature, so the compensation. So it doesn't necessarily mean it was the actual dollar amount that resulted in higher applications, but it was more just having some information there. So as background information, it's not a mandatory field in our job postings, but we find that the more information that is included, the more likely that's going to get students to apply. So it could be benefits that are maybe outside of the actual dollar earnings, or it might even be sample statements related to salary being commensurate with the student's level of work experience or their educational level, how far they are into their degree. So we just found that having a little bit more clarity information and transparency in that area did help students apply. And then on this next slide, we took a sample job posting that did really well in terms of overall job application numbers. So this posting received over 700 applications, which is amazing. And this is from the tech sector. So you can tell they, when you read this job description, the best place you've ever worked, kind of makes you want to apply and work at this mysterious organization. And you can tell when we look back at some of the previous slides in terms of the motivators and maybe some of the values of Gen Z talent, you can tell that this posting did a good job incorporating that language. So, what mattered to Gen Z talent? They said benevolence. So you can see that this posting touches on, being a force for good in the world, making a difference, having global impact. Students also value, that, again, that independent thought and self-direction. So the posting talked about the power to create and sort of having some, onus themselves as an employee. And then they also care about hedonism, right? They still want to have fun while making an impact. So they even have fun right inside the job posting there. So they did a really good job sort of incorporating some of that past research and really speaking to Gen Z talent. So we're hoping that this will give you some, ideas for your future postings. And so now I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Emily, to talk about recruitment engagement.
Thanks, Tammy. Understanding this next generation of talent is the first piece of the puzzle. But what do you do with that information? And how can you ensure that you're attracting the right talent through your recruitment process and then engaging that talent once it's in the door? We know as a startup, your time is limited and every second counts. It's important to plan ahead if you're looking to hire co-op talent to ensure that you're prepared for their first day on the job and getting the most out of your hire. This all starts with the recruitment phase. This is your very first impression. As a startup, the job posting might be a student's first experience with your brand or your company. This isn't a bad thing to not have some of that reputation that some larger organizations do. It provides the opportunity for you to really shape what the student's perception of your organization is from day one. In that job description and the interview, talk about your company values and your culture. One of the most important things you can do is simply be transparent. What does the day-to-day life look like? And I know there might not be a regular day-to-day life, but even giving an idea of how does your team work together? Do you have a daily huddle? What is the workplace atmosphere? Be transparent about things like salary and the type of work students will be doing. Don't overpromise. Start with those basic tasks that you know the student will be working on, and whatever comes extra on top of that is simply a bonus. Where possible, hold video interviews. Whether you're looking to hire in person or manage them remotely, creating that face-to-face connection right from day one can make a big difference. When it comes to onboarding, it is so key to a student's and really any employee's success to provide great onboarding. This starts from day one, sending a quick good morning, welcome to the team, providing an intro email, welcoming them to the team, and including the rest of your team members. Start to build that cohesion from their first day on the job. Provide an opportunity to meet the rest of the team. Hiring a co-op student might mean you're going from one person to two people on your team, but still create that interaction regardless of the size. A quick Zoom call with a round table, everybody introducing a little bit about themselves, can help the student create those connections that we know are so important to Gen Z. Goal setting is essential to ensure that both you and the student are getting the most out of the work term. Talk about setting goals for their professional career, their personal goals, and how you can help them achieve this. And also talk about yourself as the employer. What do you hope is going to be achieved throughout the entire term? We know that Gen Z wants to provide meaningful work and make a difference in the organization. So share this impact during your onboarding. We know not every task is going to be complex problem solving. Perhaps what you really need a student to do is data entry. And there's nothing wrong with that. But explain why they're doing data entry. What's going to happen with those contacts or the data that they're analyzing? Help them understand that bigger picture and can help them feel more connected to the work and take something that maybe seems like a menial task to actually feeling like they're making a difference in the organization. Mentorship is key to a successful work term. These students are in their undergrad degree and are early on in their career. Think back to some of your very first jobs. What do you really wish a manager did for you? What do you wish you knew starting off in your career that maybe you know now? This is your opportunity to impact this next generation of entrepreneurs. You could be working with them in the future. You never know when your paths will cross again. And of course, provide on-the-job training. If you yourself don't have the technical knowledge to support the student, point them in the right direction of resources that can help them feel more prepared for any of the tasks they might be undertaking. In general, our employers report about 2 weeks of onboarding time for the student to be fully up and running. Now, don't get me wrong, this doesn't mean that it's going to be 2 weeks of hands-on training. This simply means it takes about 2 weeks for the student to be able to work at full capacity. I know for myself, in the very first week, I give their student their very first project so I can get a better understanding of how they work and what type of support I need to provide as a manager. When it comes to the work term, I'm going to oversimplify this for a minute. We need to think about both the employer and the student's perspective of the work term. And in some cases, there's potential for tension. We know from the student side, they want to contribute to the organization, have meaningful work, but they're also there to learn new things. They don't only want to be given work that's super easy or menial. From the employer's perspective, they have a lot of things on the go, and this is a new employee to their organization. If the work they give a student isn't straightforward enough, it could mean more time invested in training and supporting each student on doing the work. You can think of this in terms of organizational productivity. And it's this tension between those two things, finding that balance, that we did another research project on to look at what type of tasks to give students to create a win-win situation for everyone involved. Taking this a step further, we need to look at what is meaningful work and how does this look for a student? So we think about there's two kind of buckets here. There's criticality and complexity. And these both things tie into something that would be classified as meaningful work. If a new employee is only exposed to tasks that are high in criticality and high in complexity, they might feel overwhelmed, experience burnout, and not want to stay in the job. On the flip side, if your new hire, whether this is a student or full-time employee, is only given tasks that are low in complexity and criticality, they won't feel like they're making an impact or that their work matters. If you combine these two types of tasks for students, It can help them feel like they're making meaningful contributions to the organization, they're feeling productive, and developing their skills. So what does this mean during the work term when you're trying to assign projects? We look at this in 3 different types of tasks. The first is the highlight project. I like to think of this as the reason you hired a student. You clearly have a business need and the main reason that you brought in someone to your workplace. This highlight project is typically something that would last for the entire term, and it's more complex. It requires ongoing work to be completed, and perhaps there's an opportunity for a student to share a report or a presentation at the end of the term, covering all the work they did in relation to this highlight project. An example would be building and launching a new website. This gives them the opportunity to investigate, to problem solve, and really think creatively. Students sometimes are coming up with solutions to tasks that perhaps haven't even been thought of before. I'm always amazed at some of the roles that students bring forward themselves that make a huge difference in an organization. This next bucket of work is those daily or routine tasks, those things that constantly need to be done. There's still room within these tasks for incremental improvement. They can take a look at processes with a fresh set of eyes. One thing students love to do is ask, why are we doing it this way? They're learning the latest techniques in their academics and have worked in other locations. Because every 4 months our students are switching between a work term and academics, you might be hiring a co-op student that's already worked in 5 different organizations. They might have a different perspective to bring into the organization and can help to automate or improve processes to, in the long run, cut down the amount of time that it takes to do some of these things. The other piece is side projects. Just like with any employee, people complete tasks at different speeds. The last thing you want to do is hire a co-op student that's constantly saying, what can I do now? And you're trying to scramble off the side of your desk to find another project. Outline these projects right from the start. Every single company has that wish list of things that never seem to be get done. This could be a great opportunity to move some of those things forward. Perhaps it's something that you don't have the answer or solution to. Set the student on it, see what they come up with as a solution. I'm amazed at some of the things they bring forward. Talk to your other team members. Where could they need support that your student could provide? Co-op students are very agile and can flip very quickly to a new task and become part of the team. It also ties back to that research, knowing that they want to connect with people at work. So maybe they're working with you as the founder on their highlight project and those routine tasks, but maybe they can go support someone else on a side project. Perhaps you hired a graphic designer in your work term, but they're also passionate about marketing writing. Have them do a side project that's developing an email campaign funnel. Just because you hired for one role doesn't mean that's the only task the student can complete. Taking this a step further and thinking about how can we really accelerate our success with these students. Knowing you have them in your workplace for about 4 months, it's important to halfway through that term host a midterm review. Talk about what's going really great and what isn't. There's still a lot of time left to build a plan together to ensure that you're getting the work you need done and the student is feeling connected to the work and like they're doing a good job. Revisit the goals that you set in that first week. Are you on track? If so, great. Maybe there's a chance to even look at pushing those things a step further. And if you're not on track with those original goals, put a plan in place to make sure they can be achieved. Also at midterm, it's a great time to think about hiring your next student. Nobody knows the job better than the student currently in the role. Have them help with screening applicants and participate in the interview process. A peer-to-peer recommendation goes a really long way. Which takes us to brand ambassadors. As a startup, there's a constant need to further spread the word about your organization. We know that next-gen talent is very connected. In person, through social channels, they are constantly in contact. Why not take a young employee that's worked in your organization and turn them into a brand ambassador for your organization? Whether that's your company or product itself, or just to build a future talent stream of employees. Have your student create a student manual that talks about the processes and the types of roles that they completed. to help reduce the training load for your next student. Really utilize this next gen talent. You have them in the door. It can help you better understand your future workforce and how to make the most out of every hire. When it comes to funding, we all know this world comes down to dollars and cents. The great news is there's more money than ever before to help support hiring a co-op student. The most popular funding program that many of our employers use is called the Student Work Placement Program. It's a federal funding that's delivered through different delivery partners that we've partnered with to help make your funding process a little bit easier. It's a 50 to 70% wage subsidy that's paid at the end of the work term. So you must be financially capable to pay the student for the duration of the term and be a registered Canadian business. Students also need to be added to payroll. There's an example on the screen there of just how low cost it can be. And this is for 4 months of work. Imagine the things that someone can do, and it's not going to break the bank to hire them. There are additional funding opportunities that are available, and our site is listed on the slides there that lists a numerous amount of funding opportunities that are available depending on the role you're looking to hire. Things like tax credits, research grants, and project-specific funding might be a great fit for you to help reduce your cost of hiring. In order for Canada to continue to be one of the best markets in the world, we need to expand our internal borders when it comes to recruitment. We need to take full advantage of remote work opportunities that gives access to talent pools that traditionally you might not have ever considered. You could be a company that's based in Vancouver, hiring from students from a school in Ontario like Waterloo, but that student actually is currently living in Nova Scotia. We really are able to access so much more talent than ever before. We constantly hear about bridging gaps with global talent, but it's important to keep in mind that there's a large international student base that are studying in Canada. This could be an opportunity to tap into the global talent market right now and access that top talent from across the world. There has never been a better time to invest in young talent. A great way to think of it is, especially when you're hiring students in co-op, it's almost like a 4-month interview. You know you have someone in the door for 4 months. You invest a bit of time into their training and their development. It's low risk and low cost and allows you to fill that talent need that you need most. We know in the startup world, the talent that you need in January could be completely different by the time May comes around. And through hiring co-op talent, you're able to have that agility to access the talent pool you need most. It also gives you a great way to fill your longer term talent pipeline. You hire a student for 4 months in co-op, you know they're a good fit for your organization and the quality of work they produce. That's the perfect candidate to recruit as a full-time hire for your organization. Now you may be asking yourself, why is the University of Waterloo, based in Ontario, talking to us here at Vancouver Startup Week? Well, not only do we have the largest co-op program of its type in the world, we also have a large team of staff that's based across Canada to help support you. This is your local support team. Peggy Eichinger, Terry Matthews, and Sheila Rodriguez, they're located on the West Coast. Terry lives right in Vancouver and can provide that feet on the ground support to you as an employer. Sheila is a student advisor who supports our students that are working out on the West Coast. So you're not receiving any less support or service by hiring from a school that's out of province. And so many of our students' home base is Vancouver or is BC. Doing a work term in person in those locations is actually going back home and likely where they want to end up full time. So although we might not be located in the province, our talent is local and is there ready to support you. And of course, if you're looking at a remote work term, the possibilities are endless. Hiring co-op talent can be your next step to building your company and filling those next generation talent needs to build your future workforce. Today's the day to take a look at where your recruitment is starting and how to attract that next generation talent. I've included Tammy and my contact on the screen here. It's been an honor presenting for you today, and we hope that you found the research findings helpful to look at your recruitment practices and to consider how you appeal to this next generation of talent. We'd like to open it up at this time if there's any questions, but thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. What a great session. One question I had was, as we're moving into more remote work, do you have any tips for onboarding to ensure that there's support and engagement for the co-op students?
Yeah, for sure. So we last May, when COVID really hit Canada, we had almost all of our work terms go remote within the course of a week. And so we learned a lot through that experience of every different industry, their remote work looks a little bit different. And so we do have a great article that we can share to you that talks about how to manage a co-op student remotely, because we know that can feel kind of overwhelming of how do you know if the student's doing the work? How do you connect them to the workplace? You can't just casually drop by their door. Having a chat platform is essential, whether that's through Teams or through Slack or whatever channel you might be using, just to have that quick one-to-one connection. Meeting with your student at least once a week for that face-to-face connection can make a really big difference. And then using some sort of project management tool. So whatever that might look like in your organization, but having a central place to ensure that both you and the student can track on the work that's being completed and being very clear about deadlines and goals. We see most of our students are typically using their own equipment for a remote work placement. So it reduces kind of that overhead cost of students, which is great. But you do need to invest in ensuring that you're connecting with the student maybe a little bit more than you would be in person. We know a lot of our students are living alone and are quite isolated. And so their workplace connections sometimes are their primary form of social contact as well.
Yeah, for sure. Then do you have any tips for example, like team bonding activities that either your co-op students have told you work really well or employers have, I guess, great reviews about to share with everyone?
Yeah, we've been really lucky on our team. So some of the examples with our co-op students that we have on our team, they take it upon themselves to do trivia sessions for the whole department. So I think our most recent one was a Star Wars, May the 4th be with you version. So they tend to do, different seasonal ones, but then on our, mini team, they will also do trivia about themselves. So it's a great chance for us as staff members to get to know the students. Some really cool things I've seen from other employers now, depending on your size and the resources. I've seen employers actually mail out actual kits to their student employees or full-time hire. So I've seen things like s'mores kits being mailed out, and then they do like a virtual campfire, which is really cute. Or I've seen them do things like they'll mail out paint kits, and then they'll do like a virtual paint class, like they'll have someone come on like a virtual Zoom class and do that. So there's some really cool things. I think if you're creative enough, there are things you can do. Some come with a cost, but then the things like the students running trivia, that's all free. We have a coworker in the department that does virtual cooking classes. Again, other than I guess things she would buy to cook for herself anyway, there's not too much cost involved with things like that. So I think it's a really unique environment to take advantage of like the actual employees' talents and skill sets and share that. This is the time. We're all at home anyway, so might as well.
Yeah, one of the other things that I've seen a few companies do is they're having virtual pizza parties. And so typically someone is organizing it without really telling anyone it's happening. And then at noon, a pizza will show up to everyone's house and they'll call a meeting. And they have this surprise virtual pizza party, which I think is just such a fun way to connect with each other, even outside of a co-op hire, just with your own team to create that shared experience. Because I think that's what so many of us miss about being in the office is you can't have that social time together that's so important outside of the work meetings. So definitely there's a lot of creative ways to connect in with colleagues.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love hearing about how different companies are doing it because it is so different. But these are great ideas that I'm sure our attendees will take with them in their work. I guess like one last question is if our attendees are hiring a student, they want to hire co-op students, how should they get in contact with your team? And if they want to leverage grant funding, should they work closely with your co-op departments, or how should they go about with this?
Yeah, for sure. So feel free to message us through the Whova app. If not, definitely just getting in contact with either Tammy or myself or anyone with the Waterloo team, and we can walk you through that hiring process and then also help narrow down which funding partner might be the right fit. Funding can feel really overwhelming sometimes, and so we want to help navigate that. Just to even have that confirmation of your application looks good. Let's send it over and move forward to the next step. And we can help with things like writing a job description. Some people have never hired before, and writing a great job description is a complete mystery. And that's where our team is really there to support from front to end of that hiring process. I mean, many employers do it with no support at all, but we really want to be there to support every step of the way, just to make it feel a little bit easier and get people the talent they need.